Imagine getting a voicemail from your own mother that says, "Don't contact us again." No argument, no discussion. Just a calm, cold message telling you that your family is done with you. Now imagine respecting that request. You stop calling. You stop helping. You stop fixing their problems. And 2 days later, your phone shows 58 missed calls from the same people who told you to disappear. That's exactly what happened to a Reddit user I'll call Ava. And the craziest part? Those 58 calls didn't come from guilt. They came from panic. Because Ava wasn't just their daughter. She was the person quietly holding their entire life together. And the moment she walked away, everything started falling apart. Ava was the kind of person every family says they appreciate, but rarely actually respects. She was responsible, organized, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who scheduled doctor appointments, the one who helped relatives figure out taxes, forms, and paperwork. Basically, if something complicated needed to be handled, everyone called Ava. And for a long time, she didn't mind. She loved her family. Helping them felt normal. It started with small things, helping her parents pay bills online, setting up automatic payments, explaining emails from the bank that they didn't understand. Little things. At least that's what they seemed like at first. But over time, those little things turned into entire systems that only Ava understood. And her family got very comfortable letting her handle everything. By the time Ava was in her late 20s, she had unknowingly become something like the unofficial manager of her family's life. Her parents didn't keep track of bills, because Ava did. They didn't schedule important appointments, because Ava did. They didn't organize financial paperwork, because Ava did. Even extended relatives would call her for help. "Hey Ava, can you look at this email from my insurance company?" "Ava, do you know how to fill out this tax form?" "Ava, can you help me log into my bank account?" And she always said yes, because that's who she was. The reliable one. The helpful one. The one everyone depended on. But there was one person in the family who never had those expectations placed on him. Ava's younger brother. Jason was 3 years younger than Ava, and in the family hierarchy, he was the golden child. The one who could do no wrong. Jason wasn't irresponsible in a dramatic way. He just never did anything. He floated from job to job, sometimes working part-time, sometimes not working at all. If he forgot to pay a bill, their parents would shrug. Jason's still figuring things out. If Ava forgot something, it was a completely different story. You should know better. You're the responsible one. You can handle it. And the thing is, Ava believed them. So she worked harder. She helped more. She tried to keep everything running smoothly, even when it started exhausting her. At first, Ava thought helping her parents was temporary, just until they got comfortable with technology, just until they understood their finances better, just until things settled down. But things never settled. Instead, the responsibilities kept growing. Her parents would call her about everything. Bank letters, insurance renewals, medical paperwork, even things like setting up their Wi-Fi or resetting passwords. One time her dad called her at 9 p.m. because he couldn't figure out how to open a PDF file. Another time her mom asked Ava to drive across town just to help her sign into an online portal, and Ava did it. Every time, because if she didn't help, no one else would. Certainly not Jason. About a year before everything exploded, Ava's parents decided they wanted to buy a new house. Their current home was older. The neighborhood had changed, and they wanted something newer and closer to the city. It was an exciting idea, but there was one problem. Buying a house involves a mountain of paperwork. Mortgage applications, financial documents, bank verifications, credit checks, insurance approvals, inspection reports, and Ava's parents had absolutely no idea how to navigate any of it. So naturally, they asked Ava for help, and Ava said yes. At first, it was just advice, helping them understand mortgage options, explaining what documents the bank needed. But quickly, Ava found herself doing far more than that. She was the one emailing the real estate agent. She was the one organizing the paperwork. She was the one uploading documents to the bank's portal. She even created spreadsheets to track deadlines and requirements. Her parents would occasionally ask questions. But the reality was simple. Without Ava, the process wouldn't move forward. She wasn't just helping. She was running the entire operation. Technically, Jason was supposed to help too. Their parents said they wanted both kids involved. But in reality, Jason barely participated. He missed meetings, forgot deadlines, and sometimes didn't even respond to messages. Whenever something went wrong, Ava quietly fixed it. She reminded the bank about documents. She followed up with the real estate agent. She scheduled inspections. and every time she solved another problem. Her parents praised Jason for helping the family. Ava didn't even get mentioned. Over time, the house process started wearing Ava down. She had her own job, her own life, but every evening she was dealing with emails, phone calls, and paperwork related to her parents' house. Sometimes she would spend hours fixing issues that weren't even her fault. Like when Jason forgot to send an income statement the bank requested, or when her dad accidentally uploaded the wrong tax document. Each mistake created delays, and each delay meant more work for Ava. But she kept going. Because she wanted her parents to succeed, because she believed helping them was the right thing to do, and because deep down, she thought they appreciated it. She thought they understood how much effort she was putting in. But she was about to learn something painful. The email that started it all. About 3 months into the mortgage process, the bank sent an important request. They needed updated financial documents from Jason, specifically proof of his employment history. It was required because his name was partially connected to the application. The email was very clear. If the documents weren't submitted within a week, the mortgage approval could be delayed. So Ava forwarded the message to Jason. She even highlighted the important sections. And she texted him to make sure he saw it. Jason replied with one sentence. "Yeah, I'll handle it." Ava believed him, and that turned out to be a mistake. 1 week later, 7 days passed, then 8, then 9, and the bank sent another message. The documents still hadn't been uploaded. Ava immediately checked with Jason. He didn't respond. She called him. No answer. Finally, hours later, he texted back. "Oh yeah, I forgot." Just like that, Ava felt her stomach drop, because she knew exactly what would happen next. The bank would contact their parents, and when something went wrong, Ava was usually the one blamed, even when it wasn't her fault. She hoped this time would be different. But deep down, she already knew it wouldn't be. The beginning of the end. 2 days later, Ava's mom called her, and the moment Ava answered, she could hear the anger in her voice. "Why didn't you submit the documents the bank asked for?" Ava blinked in confusion. "What documents?" "The ones for Jason's employment history." "The bank said they're missing," Ava tried to explain. "Mom, I sent that to Jason last week. He said he'd handle it." But her mom didn't pause, didn't question Jason, didn't even ask him if that was true. Instead, she said something that made Ava's chest tighten. "Well, you're the one managing all this, so why isn't it done?" And in that moment, Ava realized something she had been avoiding for years. In her family's eyes, she wasn't the daughter helping. She was the person responsible for everything, even the things she didn't control. And that realization was about to lead to the biggest fight their family had ever had. Ava sat there for a moment after her mom said it. "Well, you're the one managing all this, so why isn't it done?" There was something about the tone that hit harder than the words themselves. It wasn't confused. It wasn't concerned. It was accusatory, as if Ava had personally sabotaged the entire house purchase. She took a breath and tried to stay calm. "Mom, I sent Jason the email. He said he'd handle it." There was a pause. For a brief second, Ava thought maybe her mom would call Jason to confirm. Maybe she'd realize what happened. Maybe she'd understand. Instead, her mom sighed heavily into the phone. "Well, you should have followed up." Ava blinked. "I did." "No, you didn't," her mom snapped. "Because if you had, the bank wouldn't be calling us." And there it was. That familiar feeling Ava had experienced her entire life. No matter what actually happened, the blame somehow circled back to her. The family meeting. Later that evening, Ava's parents asked her to come over. They said they needed to talk about the situation. The moment she walked into the house, she could feel the tension in the air. Her dad was sitting at the kitchen table with his arms crossed. Jason was leaning against the counter scrolling through his phone, and her mom looked annoyed, not stressed, not worried, just irritated. Ava hadn't even taken her coat off when her dad spoke. "The bank says we're missing documents." Ava nodded slowly. "Yeah, the employment verification for Jason. I sent him the request last week." She gestured toward her brother. Jason didn't even look up from his phone. Her mom immediately responded, "That's not the point." Ava frowned. "What do you mean?" "The point," her mom said sharply, "is that the bank is calling us saying paperwork isn't done." Ava felt her patience starting to crack. Yes, because Jason didn't submit it. Jason finally looked up, and instead of apologizing, he shrugged. "I was busy." Ava stared at him. Busy doing what? Jason had been unemployed for nearly 2 months. but no one in the room acknowledged that. The double standard. Ava looked at her parents. So, can he just send the documents now? Her dad shook his head. That's not the issue. Ava blinked again. Then what was the issue? Her mom leaned forward. The issue is that you're managing this process. And clearly something is slipping through the cracks. Ava felt something tighten in her chest. She tried again. Mom, I'm not managing Jason. I sent him the request. You should have made sure he did it. The room went quiet. Ava looked at Jason, then back at her parents. So now I'm responsible for making sure he does his job too? Her dad frowned. You're the organized one. The words weren't loud, but they hit like a hammer. Years of frustration. Something inside Ava finally snapped. Not explosively, not dramatically, just quietly. Years of small frustrations suddenly lined up in her mind. Every late-night phone call asking her to fix something. Every bill she organized. Every piece of paperwork she handled. Every time Jason messed something up and she cleaned up the aftermath. And now, they were blaming her for his mistake. Ava let out a slow breath. I've spent the last 3 months running this entire house process for you. Her mom crossed her arms. No one asked you to run it. Ava stared at her. You literally did. Her dad waved his hand dismissively. Well, if you're going to do something, you should do it right. The words hung in the air. Ava felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. She had spent countless hours helping them. And somehow, they were acting like she had failed them. Jason speaks up. Then Jason said something that made everything worse. Honestly, this whole thing is getting complicated because Ava over-organizes everything. Ava turned toward him slowly. What? He shrugged again. All the spreadsheets, emails, reminders. It's a lot. Ava almost laughed. A lot? I made those because none of you keep track of anything. Jason rolled his eyes. See, that's what I mean. You always act like you're the only responsible person here. Ava felt her hands start to shake. Not from anger, from disbelief. You forgot to send one document. Jason leaned back against the counter. Yeah, and you could have reminded me. Ava stared at him. I did. Once. The absurdity of the conversation was almost surreal. The parents take sides. Ava turned to her parents again. Waiting, hoping one of them would finally say something reasonable. Maybe acknowledge that Jason should take responsibility. But her mom shook her head. This attitude is exactly the problem. Ava's voice dropped. What attitude? This superiority complex. Ava felt her jaw tighten. You think I feel superior because I organize your paperwork? Her dad spoke next. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. Ava stared at him. You called a family meeting about it. Her mom stood up from the table. We called a meeting because the bank is now questioning our application. Ava closed her eyes for a moment, trying to stay calm, trying not to explode. But the next sentence her mom said pushed things over the edge, the breaking point. If you had just done your job properly, her mom said, we wouldn't be in this situation. The room went silent. Ava slowly opened her eyes. My job? Yes, her mom said. You volunteered to handle this. Ava's voice was barely above a whisper. I volunteered to help. Well, clearly you didn't help enough. That was it. The final straw. Ava pushed her chair back from the table. I'm done. Her dad frowned. What do you mean you're done? I mean, I'm done managing this entire process. Her mom scoffed. Oh, so you're just quitting? Ava looked directly at her. Yes. The reaction. The response was immediate. Her parents didn't panic. They didn't ask her to reconsider. Instead, they got angry. Her dad slammed his hand on the table. That's incredibly selfish. Ava laughed bitterly. Selfish? Her mom shook her head. You know how important this house is to us. Yes, Ava said quietly. Which is why I've spent months helping you get it. Her mom pointed toward the door. Well, if you're going to abandon us in the middle of the process, maybe you shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place. The words felt like a slap. Abandon, after everything she had done. The final moment, Ava grabbed her coat. Her hands were steady now, strangely calm, maybe because something inside her had finally broken. She looked around the room one last time, at her dad sitting with his arms crossed, at Jason scrolling through his phone again, at her mom glaring at her like she was the problem. Then Ava said something she had never said before. Good luck finishing the process without me. Her mom's response was cold, Don't worry, we will. Ava nodded slowly. Okay. And with that, she walked out the door. What Ava didn't know. As she drove home that night, Ava felt exhausted, emotionally drained, but also strangely relieved. For the first time in years, she wasn't responsible for fixing everything. She didn't know yet that the situation was about to get worse. Much worse, because later that night, her phone would buzz with a notification, a voicemail, from her mother. And the message inside that voicemail would change everything. It was only one sentence, but it would end their relationship. At least, that's what her parents thought. The drive home. When Ava left her parents' house that night, she didn't slam the door. She didn't yell. She didn't send a long, angry message in the family group chat. She simply walked out, got into her car, and drove home in silence. At first, her mind was racing. Every word from the argument replayed in her head. If you had done your job properly, you're abandoning us. You should have made sure Jason did it. But the more she thought about it, the more something strange started happening. Instead of feeling angry, she felt tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long day at work. The kind of tired that builds up over years. Years of being the responsible one. Years of fixing problems that weren't hers. Years of quietly carrying responsibilities no one else wanted. And for the first time, Ava asked herself a question she had never really allowed before. What if she just stopped? The notification. She had just pulled into her apartment parking lot when her phone buzzed. A voicemail from her mom. Ava stared at the notification for a moment. Part of her expected another lecture. Maybe more complaints about the paperwork. Maybe another demand that she fix everything. She sat in the car for a minute before pressing play. Her mom's voice filled the quiet space of the car, but the tone wasn't angry anymore. It was colder, more controlled, and somehow that made it worse. The message. The voicemail was only about 15 seconds long. Her mom said, "Ava, we've been talking, and we think it's best if you take some space from this family for a while." There was a short pause. Then she added the line that would change everything. "Honestly, don't contact us again. You're creating more problems than you're solving." And then the call ended. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. The moment it sank in, Ava sat there staring at her phone. For a long time she didn't move. She replayed the message once, then again, and again, each time hoping she had misunderstood something. But the words didn't change. Don't contact us again. For most people, hearing that from their own parent would spark an immediate reaction: anger, sadness, maybe panic. But Ava's reaction was something else entirely. She felt calm, not happy, not relieved, just calm, because for the first time in years, the expectations had been removed. Her mother had just told her exactly what to do. Don't contact them. And Ava decided she would respect that request. The quiet decision. When Ava got inside her apartment, she didn't cry. She didn't call friends. She didn't send a message defending herself. Instead, she sat down at her laptop and started doing something very simple. She began removing herself from things. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, just because that was what you do when you're no longer involved. The first thing she opened was the shared finance folder she had created for her parents. It contained everything: mortgage documents, bank statements, insurance paperwork, application forms, months of organized files. Ava looked at it for a moment. Then she transferred ownership of the folder to her dad's email and removed herself from access, unplugging the system. Next, she opened the budgeting spreadsheet she had built for them. The one tracking mortgage payments, savings, and monthly bills. It had taken her hours to design. Color-coded, organized, automatic calculations. She stared at it for a second, then closed the file, without saving anything new, because it wasn't her responsibility anymore. The real estate agent. Then came the most important step. Ava opened her email and found the conversation thread with the real estate agent. She had been the primary contact for months. Every question, every document, every update, everything went through her, which meant one thing. If she disappeared, the agent would notice. Ava typed a short message. Simple, professional, to the point. She explained that due to personal circumstances, she would no longer be involved in coordinating the house purchase. Any future communication should be directed to her parents. She read the message once, then hit send. The bank portal. There was one final thing. The bank's online mortgage portal. Ava had been the one uploading most of the required documents. Technically, her parents had access too, but they almost never logged in. She opened the portal one last time, checked that her parents' accounts were active, and then removed her own user profile from the system. A confirmation message popped up on the screen. "Are you sure you want to remove access?" Ava stared at the screen for a moment, then clicked yes. Just like that, she was gone from the entire process. The silence. The next morning felt strange. Ava woke up expecting something. Maybe another angry voicemail. Maybe a message demanding she fix the paperwork. But her phone was quiet. No missed calls. No text. Nothing. For the first time in months. She went through an entire morning without checking emails about mortgage documents, without answering questions about bank forms, without reminding Jason to send something. And it felt peaceful. Still painful. But peaceful. Because the pressure was gone. Her parents had asked her to stay away. And she was doing exactly that. What her parents didn't realize. Across town, her parents believed something very different. They assumed Ava would calm down. Maybe take a day or two to cool off. Then come back and finish helping. After all, that was the pattern. Every previous argument ended the same way. Ava eventually returned. She fixed the problem. And life continued. But this time was different. Because Ava wasn't just stepping away emotionally. She had stepped away logistically. The systems they relied on were no longer being maintained. Emails weren't being answered. Documents weren't being uploaded. Deadlines weren't being tracked. And no one in the family realized how fragile the process actually was. The first sign of trouble. 2 days later, the real estate agent called Ava's dad. He had a simple question. Some documents were missing from the mortgage file. Normally, Ava would have handled it. But now, there was no response from her email. Her dad sounded confused. "What documents?" The agent explained. Employment verification, updated financial statements, and several forms that still needed signatures. Her dad said he would look into it. But when he logged into the bank portal, he couldn't even find the files. Because Ava had been the one organizing everything. Jason's contribution. Naturally, their parents turned to Jason. After all, the missing document issue had started with him, but Jason had no idea how the system worked. He didn't know where files were stored. He didn't know what the bank needed. He didn't even remember the login password for the mortgage portal. Suddenly, the process that Ava had been managing smoothly for months looked like a confusing maze, and for the first time, her parents realized something. They didn't actually know how to finish the house purchase. The panic begins. Later that evening, Ava's mom tried calling her, just once. It went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. After all, she had been the one who said, "Don't contact us again." But as the next day unfolded, more problems appeared. The bank requested additional paperwork. The inspection deadline approached. The real estate agent kept asking questions, and every single issue pointed back to the same problem. The person who had been managing everything was gone, and that's when the panic started. What Ava didn't see yet, while Ava was quietly living her life, her phone was about to become the center of a storm, because over the next 48 hours, her parents would call her again, and again, and again, trying to fix the mess they had created. By the time it was over, Ava would wake up to something shocking. 58 missed calls, from the same people who told her to disappear. The quiet weekend. For the first 2 days after the voicemail, Ava's life felt strangely quiet. Not empty, just quiet. For the first time in months. She wasn't checking her phone every hour to see if the bank had emailed. She wasn't answering messages about mortgage documents. She wasn't reminding Jason to upload files he kept forgetting. Instead, she did something almost unfamiliar. She focused on her own life. She went to work. She grabbed coffee with a coworker after her shift. She even spent an evening watching a movie, without constantly pausing it to respond to emails. It felt peaceful. But what Ava didn't realize was that across town, things were starting to unravel. Fast. The first real problem. The first serious issue appeared the following morning. Ava's parents received a call from the bank. At first it seemed routine. The loan officer simply needed a few documents finalized before the mortgage could move to the next stage. Normally this would have been simple. Ava had been organizing those documents for weeks. But when the loan officer asked about the files, Ava's dad hesitated. Ava usually handles that. There was a short pause on the line. Then the loan officer asked a question that made things uncomfortable. "Could you ask her to upload them today?" Her dad cleared his throat. "Well, she's not involved anymore." The loan officer sounded confused. Not involved? No. That's when the situation became a lot more complicated. Because the bank wasn't used to dealing directly with Ava's parents. They were used to dealing with Ava, the organized one, the one who responded quickly, the one who knew exactly where everything was. Without her, the communication slowed to a crawl. The missing files. That afternoon, Ava's parents tried logging into the mortgage portal. At first, they couldn't even find the login information. It took nearly 30 minutes for Jason to locate the email that contained the password. When they finally got inside the system, they realized something uncomfortable. They didn't understand any of it. Folders, upload sections, document categories. There were dozens of files Ava had already organized. But they had no idea what half of them meant. And more importantly, they didn't know which ones were still missing. Jason tried clicking through different tabs. But the more he looked, the more confused he became. "This thing is a mess," he muttered. His mom frowned. "Ava made it." Jason shrugged. "Exactly. The blame begins again." By that evening, frustration was already building. Her parents were stressed. The bank was asking questions. And the real estate agent had sent 2 emails asking for updates. Instead of acknowledging the obvious problem, Jason had another theory. "This whole thing is complicated because Ava made it complicated." His dad looked at him. "What do you mean?" "All the spreadsheets, folders, tracking stuff. We don't even know what we're looking at." His mom nodded slowly. "She does tend to overdo things." Jason leaned back in his chair. "If she'd just kept it simple, we wouldn't be stuck like this." And just like that, the blame started shifting back to Ava, even though she wasn't there anymore, even though she had been the only person keeping things organized. But blaming Ava was easier than admitting the truth. They didn't know how to finish what she started. The realization. Later that night, the real estate agent called again. This time his voice sounded more serious. He explained that several documents still hadn't been submitted, and the deadline was approaching. If the paperwork wasn't completed soon, the mortgage approval could be delayed. Or worse, the entire deal could fall through. That's when Ava's parents started to realize something. The house purchase wasn't running on autopilot. It had been running on Ava. The first call. That night, Ava's mom picked up her phone. She stared at Ava's contact for a long moment. Part of her hesitated. After all, she had been the one who said, "Don't contact us again." But desperation has a way of rewriting rules. She pressed the call button. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. Her mom hung up without leaving a message. "Did she answer?" her dad asked. "No." Jason shrugged. "Try again tomorrow." Ava's phone. Meanwhile, Ava had no idea any of this was happening. Her phone was sitting on silent while she slept. She had gone to bed early that night. It had been a long week emotionally, and for the first time in a while she slept deeply, peacefully, without the stress of mortgage deadlines or family arguments. The calls multiply. The next morning, the bank called Ava's parents again. They still hadn't received the missing documents. The real estate agent followed up shortly after. Now the tone of the conversations was shifting. Instead of casual reminders, they sounded concerned. And that's when Ava's mom tried calling again. This time she didn't stop at one call. She called twice, then 3 times, then 5. Each time the phone rang until it went to voicemail. Jason started calling too. By the afternoon, the number of unanswered calls was climbing quickly. The panic sets in. By the second day, things were starting to look serious. The bank warned them that delays could push their application back several weeks. The seller's agent mentioned other potential buyers showing interest in the house. And suddenly the reality hit. Without Ava coordinating everything, the process was falling apart. Jason tried sending a few emails himself, but he didn't know what documents the bank needed. He accidentally uploaded the wrong file twice, and each mistake created more confusion. That's when their parents finally admitted something they hadn't wanted to say. They needed Ava. The call storm. By the evening of the second day, Ava's mom had stopped worrying about pride. She called again, and again, and again. Her dad started calling too. Jason even left 2 short voicemails asking Ava to just call back real quick. The phone kept ringing, but Ava never answered, because she had no idea it was happening. Her phone was still on silent, and sitting on her nightstand while she relaxed after work. The morning shock. The next morning, Ava woke up to sunlight coming through her window. She reached over to check the time. And that's when she noticed the notification icon on her phone. Missed calls, a lot of them. She unlocked the screen, and her stomach dropped. The call log was almost entirely filled with the same two names. Mom, Dad, over and over again. When she counted them, the number made her blink. 58 missed calls, in just 2 days, from the same people who had told her not to contact them again. The voicemails. Then Ava opened the voicemail tab. There were 14 new messages, some from her mom, some from her dad, and a couple from Jason. The first one she played was from her mom. The voice she heard was completely different from the cold tone in the original voicemail. Now she sounded stressed. Ava, call me back. We need to talk. The next message sounded even more urgent. Ava, please call us as soon as you hear this. Another one said, there's an issue with the house paperwork. And the last voicemail simply said, please, just call us. Ava's reaction. Ava sat quietly on the edge of her bed, looking at the screen, looking at the missed calls, looking at the messages. Then she scrolled up to the voicemail from 2 nights earlier. The one that started everything. She pressed play again. Don't contact us again. The words echoed in the quiet room. And for a long moment, Ava didn't move. The phone in her hand? Ava sat quietly on the edge of her bed. Her phone screen was still glowing. 58 missed calls. Her mom, her dad, Jason, over and over again. For a moment, she wondered if something terrible had happened. An emergency, an accident, something serious. But then she remembered the voicemails she had just listened to. Every single one of them mentioned the same thing. The house, not her, not the fight, not the fact that they had told her to disappear. Just the paperwork, the mortgage, the documents. Ava leaned back against the headboard and stared at the ceiling. And slowly a painful realization began to form. They weren't calling because they missed her. They were calling because they needed her to fix something again. The first response. Her phone buzzed again. Another call. Her mom. The screen lit up with the familiar contact photo. For a few seconds, Ava simply watched it ring. She felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to answer, to ask what was happening, to solve the problem the way she always had. But another part of her remembered the voicemail. Don't contact us again. Those words hadn't been said in the heat of an argument. They were calm, intentional, deliberate, and Ava had respected them. So when the phone stopped ringing, she placed it face down on the bed. And didn't call back. The new voicemail. A few seconds later, a new voicemail notification appeared. Ava sighed softly and opened the message. Her mom's voice sounded completely different now. There was no coldness left. No anger, just stress. Ava, please call me back. The bank says there are documents missing and we don't know where they are. A pause. Then a quieter sentence. You were handling all this. The message ended abruptly. Ava sat there thinking about that line. You were handling all this. Yes, she had been. For months, without thanks, without appreciation. And when something went wrong, she had been blamed. More messages. The next voicemail was from Jason. His voice sounded irritated more than worried. Ava, can you call back? We need to figure out what you did with the mortgage files. Ava frowned. What she did with them? She hadn't done anything to them. They were all still there. Organized, labeled, exactly where she had left them. But Jason had never bothered learning how any of it worked. So to him, it probably looked like chaos. Then she played the next message. This one was from her dad. His tone was tense. The bank is asking for updated documents, and we don't know what they're talking about. Call us. Again, no apology. No acknowledgement of what happened 2 nights ago. Just instructions. Just demands. The pressure builds. Across town, the situation was getting worse. Ava's parents were sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. Jason had his laptop open, trying to navigate the mortgage portal again. But every time he clicked something, more questions appeared. Document categories, verification forms, upload requirements. It looked overwhelming, because Ava had been managing it all quietly in the background. Jason rubbed his forehead. This system is ridiculous. His mom looked stressed. Can you find the employment document they asked for? Jason scrolled through the folders. I don't know which one it is. Didn't Ava organize it? Yeah, Jason said. And now we can't find anything. The call from the bank. Around noon, the bank called again. This time the tone was noticeably more serious. The loan officer explained that several required documents still hadn't been submitted, and without them, the application couldn't move forward. Ava's dad tried to sound confident. We're working on it. The loan officer hesitated. These were due 3 days ago. 3 days, exactly the amount of time since Ava had stepped away. The real estate agent. Later that afternoon, the real estate agent called too, and this conversation was even worse. The seller had begun asking questions. They wanted confirmation that the financing process was still moving forward, because if it wasn't, they might consider other offers. Ava's parents tried to reassure him, but their voices lacked confidence, because deep down they knew the truth. The process wasn't moving forward anymore. It was stuck. Jason's solution. By early evening, Jason had a suggestion. Maybe Ava locked us out of something. His mom looked up. What do you mean? I don't know. Maybe she removed access to the documents. It was a convenient theory. If Ava had sabotaged the system, then none of this was their fault. But when they finally checked the shared folder again, everything was still there. Perfectly organized. Every document clearly labeled. Every deadline listed. The problem wasn't missing files. The problem was that no one understood how to manage them, except Ava. The calls become desperate. That night, the calls started again. Ava's mom called first, then her dad, then Jason, one after another, each call going straight to voicemail. By the 10th attempt, her mom finally left another message. Ava, we really need your help. The bank says the process might be delayed. Then another one a few minutes later. Ava, please call back. This is important. Then another. Ava, we're trying to reach you. By midnight, they had called nearly 20 times. Ava's evening. Meanwhile, Ava was sitting on her couch watching a movie. Her phone was still on silent. She hadn't checked it since the morning, and for the first time in months. She felt strangely free. No constant messages, no urgent emails, no stress about other people's responsibilities. Just quiet, just peace. It felt unfamiliar, but also necessary. The next day, the following morning, the bank sent another update. Without the missing documents, the mortgage approval couldn't proceed. And if the delay continued, the seller might cancel the deal. That's when Ava's parents finally said something they had avoided saying. We need Ava. Jason sighed. Then she should answer her phone. His mom looked at him sharply. You told her to leave too. Jason shrugged. Well, she didn't have to take it literally. The truth. But Ava had taken it literally. Because for years she had done the opposite. For years she had ignored the insults, ignored the blame, ignored the exhaustion, and kept helping anyway. But this time, they had told her to go. And she listened. The message that changed everything. That afternoon, Ava finally checked her phone again. There were even more missed calls, more voicemails, more texts. One message from her mom stood out. It simply said, Ava, please call us. The house deal might collapse. Ava read the text twice. Then she slowly put the phone down. Because in that moment, something became very clear. Her family didn't want to fix their relationship. They wanted to fix their mortgage application. And those were two very different things. The final voicemail. That evening, one final voicemail arrived. This time it was from her dad. His voice sounded exhausted. Ava, we might lose the house if this doesn't get sorted out. A long pause followed. Then he added quietly, we really need you to call back. Ava listened to the message once. Then she looked again at the voicemail from 2 nights earlier. The one that started everything. Don't contact us again. She placed the phone down on the table and didn't call back. The silence that followed. After listening to her dad's final voicemail, Ava placed her phone on the table and walked away. She didn't delete the messages. She didn't block the numbers. She simply didn't respond. For years, every time her family called, she answered. Every time something broke, she fixed it. Every time there was confusion, she stepped in and sorted it out. But this time, something had changed. They had made their decision. And Ava had simply respected it. They said, don't contact us again. So she didn't. The deadline. Meanwhile, the mortgage process was approaching a critical deadline. The bank had already given Ava's parents several reminders. They still needed the updated employment documents. They still needed corrected financial statements. And they still needed a few final signatures to move the loan forward. Normally, Ava would have handled all of that within a single afternoon. But now the process had slowed to a crawl. Because no one else understood how the system worked. Jason spent most of the morning trying to upload the files. He managed to submit 2 of them, but one was the wrong document. and the other was incomplete. When the bank reviewed the uploads, they sent another message. Required documents are still missing. Error. The seller gets impatient. The seller of the house had been patient for weeks. But patience doesn't last forever in real estate. By the end of the week, the seller's agent contacted Ava's parents again. His tone was polite, but firm. There were other buyers interested in the property, and if the financing couldn't be confirmed soon, the seller might consider accepting another offer. Ava's parents tried to reassure him. They said the paperwork was almost finished. They said they were just waiting on a few final details. But inside the house, things were far from finished. They were barely moving at all. Error. The argument at home. That evening, the stress finally exploded. Jason was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open again. His mom was pacing the room. His dad was flipping through a stack of printed documents that Ava had organized weeks earlier, and no one understood what they were looking at. "This is ridiculous," Jason said. "We shouldn't need Ava to do this." His mom stopped pacing. "Then why haven't you finished it yet?" Jason frowned. "Because the system is confusing." His dad sighed heavily. "Ava knew how it worked." Jason snapped back. "Well, she's the one who decided to disappear." That sentence hung in the air for a moment. Then his mom said something quietly. "No, we told her to." The room went silent. Error. The uncomfortable truth. For the first time since the argument, the reality of the situation became impossible to ignore. They had pushed Ava away. They had blamed her for Jason's mistake. They had told her she was causing problems. And then they told her not to contact them again. Now the one person who knew how to manage everything was gone. Error. The final call from the bank. 2 days later, the bank made their decision. Without the required documents, they couldn't continue processing the mortgage. The loan application would have to be paused, possibly restarted, which meant delays. Weeks of delays, and in the fast-moving housing market, weeks can make all the difference. When Ava's parents received the call, they tried to negotiate. They asked for more time, but the answer was simple. Without the documents, the bank couldn't move forward. Error. The house is gone. Later that afternoon, the real estate agent called with the news. The seller had accepted another offer. A buyer with financing already approved. The house was gone. Months of preparation, weeks of paperwork, dozens of phone calls. All of it collapsed in a matter of days. And the reason was painfully simple. The person who had been managing everything was no longer involved. Error. The last attempt. That evening, Ava's phone rang again. She glanced at the screen. Her mom. This time she hesitated. Not because she wanted to fix the situation, but because she wondered what her mom would say now. Would there finally be an apology? Would they admit what happened? The phone kept ringing. Eventually it stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. Ava took a deep breath before pressing play. Error. The voicemail. Her mom's voice sounded tired, not angry, not panicked anymore. Just tired. Ava, the house deal fell through. There was a long pause. Then she added something softer. We didn't realize how much you were doing for us. Another pause. We should have handled things differently. The message ended there. No excuses, no arguments. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Error. Ava's realization. Ava sat there for a long time after listening. Part of her felt sad. Not about the house, but about the relationship, because the truth was finally clear. Her family had never really understood her role in their lives. They thought she was just helping with small things. They didn't realize she was holding the entire system together. And when she stepped away, everything fell apart. The lesson. In the weeks that followed, Ava's phone stopped ringing so much. Her parents eventually figured out how to manage their own paperwork. Slowly, messily, but they learned, and Ava focused on her own life, her own responsibilities, her own peace, because she had spent years carrying a weight that was never truly hers. And sometimes the only way for people to understand your value is for them to experience what life looks like without you.